Attorney General Pam Bondi appeared today before the Senate Judiciary Committee, and the reason she did so is not because she was being generous with her time. It's because it's a requirement of her job. Namely, the Senate Judiciary Committee is there to exert oversight on behalf of the American people of the parts of the executive branch under its purview, and that begins for the Senate Judiciary Committee, not just with judges, but also with the Justice Department, which is intended to be the chief law enforcement agency in our country, overseeing things like the FBI. So Pam Bondi went there out of obligation, not out of kindness. And the reason attorneys general go to the Senate is because that is the mechanism by which we, the American people, and I realize this is theoretical and a little bit idealistic, but it's nonetheless true. It's the mechanism by which we demand answers from critical executive branch officials to the questions that we have, the information that we are entitled to, such as, why did you say multiple times that there's a client list for Jeffrey Epstein that the government is refusing to disclose? And then earlier this year say that it was sitting on your desk for review and you would release it, and now say there is no such thing as the Epstein client list and we'll never see that? What is in the Epstein files that you refuse to release? Does any of it involve well-known politicians, including Donald Trump? She just refused to answer any of this, what the legal authority is for Trump's new policy of bombing boats out of existence off the coast of Venezuela with no evidence, no process of any kind. Questions about whether he could do that to American citizens, either off the coast of Venezuela or on American territory. Questions that were often asked and needed to be answered, often weren't. When Obama claimed a very similar power, not justifying it through drug trafficking, but through terrorism, she just basically refused to answer anything. But because what she did in lieu of answering the questions and giving not the Democratic senators or senators in general the information that they were asking, who cares if they get information? The point of the hearing is to give us information, American citizens information. In lieu of providing that, she instead just had prepared a whole bunch of talking points for every Democratic senator of whatever scandals they have had in their past, for whatever they did that she thinks was worthy of condemnation. And they were entirely unrelated to the question. So she would be asked, have you ever seen any documents in the Epstein files showing X, Y, and Z? And she would say, I'd like to remind you that so-and-so, Reed Epstein, who knew Jeffrey Epstein well, donated money to your political campaign, and just refused to answer the questions. And a lot of conservatives, not all by any means, but a lot, thought this was really great. Like, yeah, we love seeing her defiant and hurling accusations at these Democratic senators. And before I get into the specifics and show you some of these exchanges and the reasons why I think no matter how much you love Trump or hate Democratic senators, you ought to find this very disturbing, and Pam Bondi in general, her ineptitude, disturbing. I just want to point out that, and I promise you this is true, and I have years of evidence to demonstrate it, that nobody, I stand second to nobody in my contempt for like the Senate, just the Senate as an institution, and for senators, most of them, and these senators, the Democratic senators on this committee, people like Sheldon Whitehouse and Richard Blumenthal and Cory Booker and Dick Durbin. I promise you, I should go without saying, that nothing I'm saying here is in defense of those people or out of a belief that they deserve respect or deference of any kind. I'm not offended in any way that she mistreated them or treated them without deference or respect. I couldn't care less about that. I would treat them the same way. They're windbags. They're so pompous. There's really nothing more sanctimonious and filled with blowhards than the U.S. Senate. It's really like an out-of-touch, detached country club for rich people who are really enamored of themselves. I mean, there's no more self-love, no greater self-love that you will find anywhere than in the United States Senate. They just really regard this as like a revered institution. And so that isn't my concern at all. The reason she's going there isn't to show respect for Democratic senators. It's to show respect for Americans. This is how we understand what our government is doing. This is how we ask questions of people like the Attorney General through our elected officials that we vote for and put in the Senate and put in Congress. And that's why you ought to take it seriously. It's actually an important venue to extract information. And not only did Pam Bondi go there with the full intention of disclosing nothing, of making very clear she would respond to nothing, she would provide no information, and she would be proud of it, as she kind of like adopted these sort of very angry girl boss gestures, really like a theater. You know, she would like shake her head a little bit as she like chastised them and then drink from her water, hoping to create gifts. It was pathetic. But if it were clever, if it were executed well, if there were like a real strategy behind it, I would still be irritated as a journalist that I wasn't getting the transparency I think we should have, but I could at least respect it. The problem with Pam Bondi is, and I don't say this lightly, I know it sounds rude to say it, but sometimes when it comes to very powerful people, you have to be clear about who they really are and what their failings are. Pam Bondi is genuinely dumb. I didn't have that opinion when she was chosen as Trump's attorney general. I knew of her. I didn't know much about her. I was open-minded. But after seeing her over 9 months in countless interviews, testimony, speeches, extemporaneous remarks, she doesn't know what she's talking about. This job is so much bigger than she is so beyond the ken of her understanding and knowledge that it's hard to describe. I don't think that about people with whom I disagree easily. There are a lot of people with whom I disagree who I think are very smart. She isn't. And I'll just give you one example before we get into the hearings of today. In September 15th, a few days after Charlie Kirk's assassination, Pam Bondi went on the podcast of Katie Miller, who is the wife of Stephen Miller. So even here, White House officials go on the podcast of the spouses of other White House officials, or in this case, Trump administration officials, go on the podcast of the wives of Trump White House officials. This kind of incestuous behavior is something, just as a journalist, I dislike. Obviously, she's not going to be asked any pressing questions, any hard questions, and she wasn't. Nonetheless, she uttered a statement that created a huge amount of backlash among conservatives, rightfully so. And everybody is prone to misspeak. Everybody might have a bad moment where they just say something in a poorly expressed manner. We have all had that, where we have to go back and clarify what we think. But what she said here is such an egregious and obvious violation of just basic constitutional doctrine of free speech in the First Amendment that nobody who ever went to law school, let alone practice as a lawyer, let alone somebody who is elevated to attorney general, it shouldn't even be able to pass their mind and through their lips. And yet, because of her just lack of grasp of basic governmental and constitutional dogma, I'm talking about complex and esoteric issues, I'm talking about basic minimal knowledge. This is what she said.
There's free speech and then there's hate speech. And there is no place, especially now, especially after what happened to Charlie, in our society.
Do you see more law enforcement going after these groups who are using hate speech and putting cuffs on people so we show them that some action is better than no action?
We will absolutely target you, go after you if you are targeting anyone with hate speech, anything. And that's across the aisle.
I mean, that is one of the most pathetic things I've ever heard. And it wasn't just an off-the-cuff comment. I mean, she gave two separate answers. The first of which said, here you have free speech and here you have hate speech, as though hate speech is not part of free speech. This is the understanding of like the dumbest liberal who wants to justify a censorship regime. Like, we're not censoring free speech. This is hate speech. This is inclined to incite animosity toward marginalized, you know the whole moronic framework. It was remarkable. I already had a low opinion of her competence before that interview. That really shocked me. And then Katie Miller actually endorsed it as well and went so far as to say, okay, you just said that hate speech is separate from free speech, despite how many decades the Supreme Court has ruled that there's no such thing as illegal hate speech. Charlie Kirk himself kept emphasizing there's no such thing as hate speech in the United States. It's just all free speech. And Katie Miller, the wife of Stephen Miller, who is also a podcast host who can get top Trump officials on her show, also asked her then, like, yeah, we're sick of hate speech. Are you going to put handcuffs on people, on Americans who express hate speech? And instead of Pam Bondi saying, oh, you know what, actually, I might have expressed myself wrong. It's totally constitutional to express what I regard as speech that's hateful. The government doesn't differentiate. She doubled down. She said, yes, we're going to go after you if you are an American spouting hate speech. And as I said, this provoked immense amounts of, to their credit, anger on the part of conservatives as well. But it really, to me, illustrated just how poor of a grasp she has on what her job is. There's this business school concept called the Peter Principle, which is that everybody keeps getting promoted and they rise up until the level of their incompetence. So you do your job, you get promoted, you do your job well, you get promoted. You keep getting promoted until you finally arrive at the point where you're incompetent to do that job. The job is beyond your kind of knowledge and skills. Pam Bondi is the perfect illustration of that. I realize she's a very loyal Trump supporter, very loyal to Donald Trump. She kind of has the ethos of, she looks like she could be a Fox News newsreader. So I get the aesthetic of her. She speaks in this like pseudo-aggressive tone. I get all that. But there's no substance there. She's extremely unimpressive. And if you're somebody who has aspirations for the Trump Justice Department to do things that we may not even agree that they should do, but if you're somebody who does, she's not going to be capable of doing it. She's a mess. And that was very apparent when she showed up today at the Senate Judiciary Committee. They had a lot of questions, and I think not just Senate Democrats, but a lot of conservatives also have questions about, including what happened with her mishandling of the Epstein files and the various conflicting statements she made about it. So as a reminder, here's what she said on February 21st on Fox News.
Jay may be releasing the list of Jeffrey Epstein's clients? Will that really happen?
It's sitting on my desk right now to review. That's been a directive by President Trump. I'm reviewing that. I'm reviewing JFK files, MLK files. That's all in the process of being reviewed because that was done at the directive of the president from all of these agencies.
So have you seen anything that you said, oh my gosh?
Not yet.
Okay. Well, we'll check back with you.
So she said, yeah, the Epstein list is on my desk. Now, maybe there are explanations for what she meant to say. Maybe she misspoke, which would go into the ineptitude column again. I mean, how do you say the Epstein list, which she knows is something everyone is interested in, is sitting on her desk for review to be released if there is no such thing as the Epstein list? At the very least, if not dishonest, it's utterly inept as well. So naturally, there were journalists who have been reporting on things that have been going on here in terms of the handling of the Epstein file, including a Wall Street Journal article from July, the headline of which is, the DOJ told Trump in May that his name is among many in the Epstein files. That's what they reported, that the Attorney General told Donald Trump in May that his name is among many in the Epstein files, which isn't necessarily even incriminating about Trump. He knows Jeffrey Epstein well. He spent a lot of time with him prior to that first conviction. He had terminated his friendship with him before that, but it's normal that Jeffrey Epstein would be talking a lot about Trump. But he is in the Epstein files. Remember, Elon Musk said Donald Trump is in the Epstein files. And then the article reported this, quote, among many in the Epstein files, Pam Bondi told the president at the meeting that Justice decided not to release more Jeffrey Epstein documents because of the presence of child pornography and the need to protect victims. Which never made any sense. You could just not release the child pornography. You could just redact the name of the victims. But of course, it's a completely legitimate question, not for Democratic senators, but for you to want to know, did Pam Bondi tell Donald Trump that his name appeared repeatedly in the Epstein files and that she even flagged those documents, as the Wall Street Journal reported? And so Dick Durbin, again, zero concern, respect, support for Dick Durbin, zero, literally zero. But the question he asked is one of the questions he should ask, that you should want an answer to, and here's how she responded.
The quarrel with you is to read somebody that you mentioned I never heard of.
Reid Hoffman.
So who gave the order to flag records related to President Trump?
Now, again, she's constantly saying, oh, you're so concerned with the Epstein files. You have a donor, Reid Hoffman, who's a liberal billionaire who was friends with Jeffrey Epstein. He gave you money. And he's saying, I don't even know Reid Epstein. Maybe he's lying. Maybe he's not. Probably he's lying. Dick Durbin wasn't interested in the release of the Epstein files during the Biden administration, wasn't criticizing the Biden administration for concealing them. All fair points, but totally irrelevant to what she should be answering. And that's what she did all day, these irrelevant, maybe valid criticism, but she's not there to criticize Democratic senators. She's there to give information to the American people.
You is to read somebody that you mentioned I never heard of.
Reid Hoffman.
So who gave the order to flag records related to President Trump?
To flag records for President Trump?
To flag any records which included his name.
I'm not going to discuss anything about that with you, Senator.
Eventually, you're going to have to answer for your conduct in this. You won't do it today, but eventually you will. I yield, Mr. Chairman.
First of all, are you somebody who thinks that the public should have the right to know that, whether or not the Attorney General went through and flagged all the pages in the Epstein files that mentioned Donald Trump, her boss, especially given that we haven't seen these documents and the Trump administration has decided to conceal them. I'm not saying there's anything incriminating there that's proof of his wrongdoing. I'm not saying, we don't know because we haven't seen them because they won't show it to us. And she has no basis for refusing to answer that question. There's no privilege that applies. And this is another point I just want to make, because although it seems very legalistic and even a little idealistic, it's still extremely true and very important. Pam Bondi, her understanding of her role as Attorney General is that she's Donald Trump's lawyer. And often during the hearing today, when she was asked questions about things she discussed with Donald Trump, or even things like this, did you flag his name? And she would say, I'm not going to answer. Often she would explicitly say, you understand that my role as a lawyer is I can't disclose legal advice that I gave to Donald Trump, as though that's her client. The Attorney General is not the lawyer for the president. This is not a controversial issue. Donald Trump is not Pam Bondi's client. Again, I know this formulation sounds idealistic, but it's still it's the truth. Pam Bondi has one client as Attorney General. That client is the American people. It's not the president. And that's why the Justice Department is expected to act independently, because she's not working at Donald Trump's behest as a lawyer. Yes, she works for him, and that is a blurry line, but she's not his lawyer. Donald Trump has lawyers. The people who give him legal advice, the people who are there to defend his interests, they're people who work in what's called the White House counsel's office. The president picks a White House counsel. He creates a little mini law firm inside the White House. Those are his lawyers. And there is an attorney-client privilege that applies for things those lawyers talk about with Donald Trump. Pam Bondi doesn't understand this. She really doesn't. She thinks she's Donald Trump's lawyer and he's her client. And that was part of the basis for her refusing to answer even the most basic questions. And yet, she just refused to. And it's not disrespectful to the Democratic senators. It's disrespectful to you and to me and to just the whole democracy. And yes, there have been other attorney generals who have been extremely partisan. That's not the problem with Pam Bondi. She's very partisan. So were Loretta Lynch and Eric Holder. So was Merrick Garland. So was Alberto Gonzales and the other Bush Cheney attorney general. So was Jeff Sessions and Bill Barr to some extent. But that's not the issue. The issue is that it's not that she's partisan. Unfortunately, attorneys general have become partisan. It's that her only obligation in her mind is to Donald Trump. And that is not the truth. That is not the case. That's not what the attorney general is there for. That's not what the Justice Department is there for. All right, let me ask you something, and don't be like Pam Bondi and refuse to answer. Really think about it. How many times do you spend every day on a web browser? Clicking around, searching, scrolling through endless tabs. It's a lot, right? I'm sure it is. Well, there's a new AI-powered browser from Perplexity called Comet, and it completely changes how you interact with the web. Using Comet feels like having a personal assistant living right inside your browser, one that can basically do anything for you. Not just give you answers, but literally click, type, scroll, and search just like you would, getting tasks done in the background while you focus on more important things. I've been trying it out, and here's what blew me away. I had Comet find a restaurant that fit my schedule, book the reservation. You tell them what kind of restaurant. It not only books it for you, it even sends a calendar invite to remind you, all while I just kept working on prepping for the show with my colleagues and ignoring what it was doing, and then it was done at the end. All I had to do was mention a few things that I was craving about food and how far I wanted to drive, and it figured out the rest, all while in the background. It can also shop for you, summarize articles, book travel, or even bulk unsubscribe you from spam. Perplexity's new AI web browser, Comet, today, you can download Perplexity's new AI web browser, Comet, today by heading to pplx.ai/Glenn. And when you download, you get a free month of Rumble Premium. That's pplx.ai/Glenn. Take back your time online with Comet. Thanks for watching this clip from System Update, our live show that airs every Monday through Friday at 7 p.m. Eastern, exclusively on Rumble. You can catch the full nightly shows live or view the backlog of episodes for free on our Rumble page. You can also find full episodes the morning after they air across all major podcasting platforms, including Spotify and Apple. All the information you need is linked below. We hope to see you there.